very first deal of the month is somebody we all know very well, past president, Charles Fisher. Come on up.
All right. All right, thank you, Sandra. How many people here have ever gone to a garage sale before? How many people have ever bought a house at a garage sale before? While most other people are looking for like 50, Augie, you bought one at a garage sale, congratulations. While most people are looking for 50-cent air mattresses or 25-cent diamonds in the rough, my first goal when I go every once in a while is to purchase the house, and I'm always asking questions. I am a licensed realtor, and I have gotten listings from garage sales because a lot of times people are either selling their houses or their tenants that are in the process of moving. I've gotten several leads for rentals as well from that. However, this time was kind of a unique opportunity. I happened upon a sale in Viera. If I know where Viera is, over in Brevard County, Charlotte, Brevard County people. Oh, do you want me to use that? Okay, I guess I need to use that for the camera. So I bought a house in Viera. I actually rolled up to this sale, and there was a for sale by owner, a FSBO sign in the front yard. And I approached the sale. I noticed there were about 3 or 4 people working the sale. I went up to the person that looked like they were in charge and said, okay, I see the house is for sale, how much? And they said, we want $100,000 cash for the property. We need to sell it very quickly. It's an estate situation. Our aunt needs to move into a nursing home. Now, the lesson number 1 was that you know your values in neighborhoods, and I knew immediately that that house should be worth anywhere from $140 to $160. I had a picture that we can't put up, but the picture, it's beautiful. It's in kind of a 0 lot line. All the yards are mowed by the association. Everything is perfect. All the hedges are beautiful. The house is in great shape. So I knew it was a great deal. I asked to see the inside. We took a look around inside the house. And by the time I was done in that 10-minute venture in the house, I said, listen, I am absolutely very interested in purchasing this house. I will pay you the $100,000. Let me go back to my house. I'll put together a contract and bring it back over to you. When can I come back? And they said, well, how about 10 o'clock? I said, great. So this is about 8:30. Came back at about 10 o'clock and presented an offer to them of the full price, $100,000 cash. Now, what I did, it was important. I asked them, what is it that you're looking for in this transaction? And the other side note to this was, as I'm sitting there talking to the owner about the purchase and presenting my offer, there were 3 other couples looking to purchase the house. The difference was I was the only investor. And what I keyed in on was what they needed, which was a quick sale. They only wanted a cash offer, and they wanted it as is. So I keyed in on that, offered in the full $100,000. I said, I am an investor. I'm going to buy it to make a profit. You've underpriced it, to which they did. And the lady told me, she said, I know I've underpriced this property. I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I want to move on, and I just don't want to deal with it. The other buyers were all buyers who wanted to move into it, get loans, and nitpick everything, so to speak. So she came back and she said, look, I really want $100,000 net. And I said, okay, I'm dealing with somebody who understands real estate here, which meant she wanted a net contract, which means she wanted to put $100,000 in her pocket after closing costs were paid. I said, fine. I wrote up the contract as $100,000 net, which cost me about $3,000 more. So the numbers played out like this. Purchase price of $100,000 net, so it cost me $103,000. Now I did borrow the entire purchase price of $100,000 from a private lender. And I had found a private lender, so happens about a month earlier, which is another interesting story. Turns out he and his mom were lottery winners. I might have mentioned that before. They won $2 million in a scratch-off. They actually bought, if anybody knows, I used to own a tanning salon business in Brevard County. They walked in the door one day, wanted to buy our tanning salon. We sold it to him cash. I wisely figured out the guy had a lot of money, probably a little bit more than he had sense. And I said, what are you doing with the rest of your money? And he said, well, I'm looking for some investments. We talked. This is the first deal I took to him. Now, this is what I paid my private lender. I gave him 2%, 2 points netted out at closing, meaning I really did bring 2 to closing because he funded 98 on a $100,000 loan. Okay? And I guaranteed him a minimum of 4 months of interest. I paid him 1% a month. Now, I bought this property mid-May. It was on the market in about 7 days because it only took $3,000 in rehab. We had to paint it, which again, I got pictures, but all we did was paint it and stage it. That was it. We put it on the market, and in 72 hours, we had 3 offers, the highest of which was 146. So I'm in for about 108 at this point or so, give or take a little bit. And this is another interesting thing I found out is the buyer was going to do a VA loan, but there's no seasoning at this point on VA loans, evidently, as long as the property appraised, which it did. The only snag was, even though the roof wasn't leaking, we couldn't get the 5-year, I think 4 or 5 year minimum on the roof. I went back to the buyer that had an agent and said, look, we'll put a new roof on, we'll split the difference. Now, I had originally estimated my rehab cost of about $7,000 because I was going to put granite and stainless, but the house sold before I could put granite and stainless in it, so I never even had to do that part of my renovation. So the $4,000 I was going to put into granite and stainless, I matched half of the cost of the $8,000 roof. I bumped the price to $150. It appraised. We closed in less than 60 days from the day I bought it to the day I sold it. And with closing costs of $7,000, a roof of $4,000, sales price of $150, we netted $26,000 from a garage sale fine. Not bad for a morning
What kind of profit would that be net of tax? And you mentioned that you painted it. How much expense went into that paint job there?
I think that I spent about $800 to do the paint job, $800 or $850, including materials with the painter I have. But that's pretty cheap. It was vaulted ceilings. This was a newer house, vaulted ceilings. It was small. It was only about 1,500 square foot, and there was no prep work. The only reason it needed paint is because the woman it was one owner house, and she had never painted the walls since it was new in, I think, 1999. So they were just dingy, and they had marks from furniture and things like that, but there weren't gouges, maybe a few little nail holes. There was not a lot of prep work, so the painting was pretty simple. And as far as the net profit after taxes, that can vary wildly amongst anybody in here, depending upon how you structure your business, if you run it through a corporation to filter off expenses, how you handle your losses and profits, and how you stage your sale. Now, it is a short-term gain, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's how it has to be characterized on a tax return. It would be short-term gain because it's less than 1 year. But I'm not an accountant, so I can't.
Roughly, maybe peel off 20% of that 26 or 40.
I think that's probably a pretty good gauge for
Okay.
most people. And that's one thing, I would tell you this, if I have a huge tax bill at the end of the year, that's not a huge problem. That just means I've made a ton more money. The last thing you'll ever hear me complaining about is how much taxes I pay, at least income taxes. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Did you say why the lady was selling it?
Yeah, she was moving into a nursing home.
Oh, sure.
And, she was just ready to be done with the house. It was kind of a sudden situation, and she had family in town. An interesting side note is she had 2 aunts that were there at the house. Is that right? Two nieces that were at the house helping her. And the one niece was local, the other one was from up north. Turns out that the one local niece was a relation to an agent in my office, and when I start talking about the deal, he goes, "That's Aunt So-and-so's house. You just bought my aunt's house. Wholesale. And I'm an investor. And how did you get the deal?" And I didn't. True story. Totally true story.
Was it a big house?
It was 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and see, this broke some rules, because if you run the numbers, 100,000 plus the repairs, if you run a Mayo of 70%, 150 times 0.7 is 105, and I really kind of broke that number a little bit, didn't I? I mean, it was really, really tight, so it doesn't really meet that minimum requirement, but it worked for me. And it was a 2-2, but understand, this was in Viera, and my target market was baby boomers downsizing, and my buyer actually lived in Viera, had a 422 about 3 or 4 blocks away, and they wanted to sell the big house and get this small 1,500 square foot 2-2, lawn service included, on a lake, on a golf course, no problems. Brand new roof, they were ready to go.
So it's 15 square.
1,500 square foot. The roof was 18 square, I think, or something. Yeah, 280 a square. Who's got a calculator? 8,000 and change.
The partner that you got the financing from.
Yes.
How did you present the deal to them?
Good question. I mean, I presented the deal. I used to do private lending myself from time to time, so I presented it to him as I would have I've been wanted to be presented to as a lender. I showed him the deal, I showed him what the property I was purchasing it for, what the value was, I showed him comps of other sales in the area. In this case, he actually looked at the property because he was a first-time lender. I went through a couple extra steps. I could put him in touch with the title company that was going to close the deal so he could ask her any questions. She vouched for me. She's closed several hundred deals for me over the last 10 years. And she said he always does what he says he's supposed to do. I gave him a sample note, a sample copy of the mortgage. He took those to his attorney for review. I answered any questions. One thing I did with him that I haven't done a lot is I actually had him do a loan commitment letter for me. And I outlined the terms that we discussed. I had him sign that letter of loan commitment to get him on the hook. Because, I mean, I was on the hook as much as anybody else, right? Because I had committed to cash on this transaction, and I wanted to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that this guy was committed to the deal. Now, I had access to the money somewhere else, but it was fundamentally I wanted to build a good relationship with this guy. And he was tickled to death. $6 grand on $100,000 in less than 60 days. It was like 58 days. When he ran it, he said, that's a 36% annual rate of return if I keep. And I said, yeah, you're right. So he's needless to say, he's ready for the next deal. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is,
Last question.
Say that? Is he here now? No, he's not. I keep him away from here.
But you can probably buy some scratch offs.
I'm only kidding. Yeah, buy
Let's
some
let Charles
scratch
go
offs.
so you can get some scratch offs. Please give Charles a round of applause.
Good job.